Hi folks, welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary, and that's your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Hi folks, welcome back. This is Game 2 from the World Chess Championship 2021 between defending champion Magnus Carlsen from Norway and from Russia, Ian Nepomniachtchi. I'll just say Napo because his name, as you can see, is very long and it's a pain to pronounce it all the time. This was a great game. Now, we saw from Game 1 it was a draw, but you know that happens. It's a lot of nerves. There's a lot of pressure leading up to the match, a lot of hype, a lot of press, a really beautiful playing venue, tons of press conferences before, lots of pressure. It's tougher for the world champion, I think, for the fact being that you've got something to lose. The challenger, of course, has nothing to lose because they're not the champion. So let's get to it. It's, like I said, it's a great game. Magnus Carlsen is white and Napo is black. So let's get to it. It's a great game, a really great game. Let's check it out. Here's playing out the opening here. It ends up being an open Catalan. As you can see from the bottom, it's this type of computer program. If you put it in there, it'll tell you what the opening is, which is helpful because I'm not exactly what I would call the greatest at opening theory. Castles, D takes, Queen C2. You can't save the pawn. B5. Knight D5. Pawn. Say, for example, white went A4. You could do that because if you go pawn here, pawn takes, you can't retake because the rook hangs. After knight E5, C6. Now, here's the issue. What is black going to do here? Because it's tricky. It's tricky. As you can see from the computer on the right, black must now prevent A takes B. So what do? The bishop position is still equal, but there's a lot of tricks to it. And so black decided, I think he made a great move. And the computer agrees. It's the number one move on the computer. Now, this is all part of their preparation. And those of you that know chess know these guys will go through all the openings, all the different branches. It's tedious. They have seconds. They have people that use computers that go through all the different openings. And the problem is, though, remembering your preparation and making sure your preparation is good. Knight D5. Nice. That knight looks really good right there. Of course, he couldn't play queen takes because after knight D5, it's just a terrible position. Now I messed up there. Sorry about that. He would take knight takes, bishop takes, and it's not so hot for black. Let's go back. Knight D5. Knight C3. Doesn't mind trading that knight on C3 for the knight on D5 because the knight on C3 is worth less. It's not in the center of the board. F6 to kick the knight. Knight F3. Queen D7. I'm not sure if I like that. And the computer does. The computer likes it. So this is all part of their preparation, I'm sure. The only reason why I don't like it is it hems in the bishop. But he doesn't have much to go anyway. He's probably end up on B7 anyway, so maybe that's okay. E4. Get your center pawns up there. Chase the knight off. Knight goes back. Goes to B4 to hit the white queen. And this is one of those things that when you're playing that, when you're in a situation like this and you're queen, where do you put the queen? This is a tough call. I mean, what do you do with it? Queen to B1 on the computer, queen E2, queen D2 or D1 are all the same. Magnus decided to go to E2. I don't think he wanted to go here. Reason being that it blocks the bishop. Knight D3. Now he's right in there. You can get rid of him easy enough. But he's still a pain in the behind. E5. Bishop. Get that bishop out of there. Do something. E takes. Bishop takes. Knight E4. All right. Looking at the position here, you can see it looks like a small advantage for black. Not much of one. We'll call it even. And it's a complicated game. There are so many pawns on the board, and looks like, oh yeah, all the minor pieces are still there, and we're on move 16. We have not traded a minor or a major piece yet. And we've only traded one set of pawns. All these pieces on the board, it makes it incredibly complicated. Knight to A6 for black. He's got to do something with that knight. At the same time, what happens is you connect the rooks. Rooks are much stronger when they're connected. Knight E5, hitting the queen. That's a tough call to make. If he moves the queen, But if he decided to play queen takes instead, knight takes check. Rook takes, A takes, and white's got a distinct advantage, a very distinct advantage. It's you can't take the pawn. The knight has to move. That pawn is going to take the C pawn. B takes C, and it starts getting ugly real quick. Bishop takes. Pawn takes. Knight to on A to C5. You want to challenge white's knight on E4. For those of you that don't know the squares, this is E4. If you see here, on the left of the board is 1 through 8. On the bottom of the board is A through H. So that would be go to the E on the bottom and go up 4 squares. That's why they call it E4. Now, if you had taken knight takes, knight to G5, and that's tough. That's tough right there. Black's got some problems, to be sure. Got some serious problems here. Let's go back. Now, knight to D6. Now, this is going to be weird because normally, as a rule, a knight that far down your enemy territory, unchallenged, is a big, big advantage. And you're going to see in a weird, weird way that knight ends up being not so hot, even though it looks beautiful. It looks stunning. It controls a lot of squares. This square, this square. He's hitting this square, this square, this square. It looks really good. But the reality of it is it ends up being not so hot. Knight goes to B3. Rook has to move to B1. And knight on B takes C. Finally takes that bishop. Now here's the deal. You always, when you're playing in chess, he's got to take it with one of the rooks. He's going to lose the exchange. Takes with that rook. Takes with that. And now, right now, white is down the exchange. Now, for those who don't know what the exchange means, that's a minor piece for a rook. But as you can see, it's almost a full point advantage for black. Now, that should speak a lot. Because really, black is up a pawn. And being 2 points, you're up to the exchange. You're up 3 full points, and the computer shows it less than 1. So white sacrificed the exchange and got a decent position out of it. And don't be afraid to do that in your games. I mean, don't let your confidence get you. It's just a game. Try it a few times, and when you get to the position where you can sacrifice the exchange more times than not, it might work out. Rook there. Now, they do that because what happens is when white's going to take here, black cannot take because a bishop takes. And this knight is guarding that square. So you have to move the rook to guard the bishop. And this is still incredibly complicated. Rook over. Beautiful spot for that rook. Now you got a discovery against the queen. He's hitting the queen. So if this knight ever moves, the queen is under attack. And that's a big pain in the neck when you have discoveries like that. It gets to you emotionally. Psychologically, you're thinking, oh, gosh, that knight. Now the queen's got to babysit the bishop instead of the rook, and it's a pain in the neck. So now you move the bishop off, because now you don't have to worry about that. Bishop. C3. I was surprised at that move, and I watched some of the game live. This is the part where I came in live. It starts at, I believe, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're playing in Dubai. And it's not even on the first three. This is where I think Nepomucci stumbled. Now, I'm not sure how much time he took for that move. And aesthetically, it looks fine. You're basically giving back the pawn to pick up a tempo. But I think, as you see here in the computer, it likes Queen E7 much, much more. Much, much more. Now Magnus has got some issues. He's got some issues. What is he going to do here? He's down the exchange and a pawn. This is a tough position. Even though it's a little cramped for black, slowly but surely black is going to open up his pieces. And I don't know. This is not so hot. But he didn't do that, and I was really, really surprised. Because he went C3 instead. So he didn't take. He moved the queen. G6. Now, if we go back here, what would have happened if bishop takes? Now the pawn can take, and now goes to C2. And that saves a lot of problems for white. But queen to C2. Black goes G6. Get an opening for his king to get out. Pawn takes finally. Pawn takes. A little bit different than the last scenario because the G7 square, which is this square right here, for those of you that were watching, you go G, and then the number 7 here, G7. That's how you determine that square. Queen takes. Now this is one here. What do you do? Which rook do you move? You want to double up now. You want to put a rook behind your queen. So that way, if the knight does move, if this knight does move, the queen can just take the rook for free. So you're kind of pinning against a pin. He decided to move the F rook. I guess that makes sense, being the rook on the B file for blacks on an open file. Rook A1. Pawn comes up, offering the exchange of queens. And the computer likes queen to C4, and you see an exclamation point. I'll bet you 9 times out of 10 amateur players will trade queens here. Why? I don't know. But he goes queen to C4. Now, as you can see, there's a problem. This is an isolated pawn. This queen is hitting it. It's right against the black king. It's a pain in the behind. Bishop takes. Knight takes. He gives it back. He gives it back. So now, we're back to having even pawns. Black gave back a pawn and got out of trouble. As you can see from the computer, there's a tiny advantage. Those of you who don't know, when you see minus in parenthesis there on the right, that means an advantage for black, and it's tiny. 0.12 is tiny. Knight goes back. Rook. Queen takes pawn. He doubles up his rooks. King goes to g2, because what would happen is rook here check would force, rook takes rook, would force the trade of rooks, and he doesn't want that. a6. Now he's got a protector for the a pawn. King h3. Move right up and out of the way. Rook hits the queen. Queen goes to d4. King g8. Pawn. Queen c7. And this is easy to screw up. Believe me, this is very easy to screw up. Queen g4. And that's where I think Magnus decided to play it safe and go for the draw. We're on move 36. And the time control's at move 40 to get extra time. And they weren't in time trouble anyway. Queen g4 is the move on the computer. But I like the computer's move rook a3, rook a2 to bring the rook around. Maybe to put some pressure. But he played queen g4. Now if rook takes here, queen takes with check, and this king's in trouble. So he takes the knight, gets rid of it, gives the exchange back, and this is something you need to learn sometimes. You're up the exchange, and it's human nature to say, I want to keep my material advantage. I was up the exchange, but this is going to make my position much easier to play with that knight missing, because for a long time that knight wasn't worth anything, but now he's worth a ton. Now, because knights and queens coordinate very well, if somehow this queen can get in here, this knight would be murderous. Queens and knights are very good coordinated, so black decided to defuse the whole thing. Takes. Push the pawn up. Now, if queen takes check. It shows an advantage for white now, the champion Magnus Carlsen, but this is dead drawn. At this level, it's dead drawn. Now, for us guys, probably not. So we're going to play a few moves out. They go for a while. And this is where it's dead drawn. Now, they say this is what they call that. I forgot what the phrase that they use, a book draw or a theory draw. I'm not sure. And there's computers that have had this figured out. 3 against 2 with 2 rooks, all the pawns connected, is dead drawn. And they play it out for a while. We'll go through the next few moves because Magnus is notorious, and Magnus is white. Magnus is notorious for taking a dead even game and play it out and play it out and play it out. White can't lose this. That's the thing. If you're playing in chess, I want you to remember, if the only 2 results that can happen, besides a huge blunder, which doesn't happen normally, if the only 2 outcomes of a game are a draw or a win, you play on. Now for black, the best he can do is draw. He has no choice but to play on. But you can make black play on and hoping for an error. And that's what Magnus does. But at this level, I think that's just his nature, though. He's always done that. And now I'm going to get the rook behind the king. Check. Pawn. Check. Check first. Then the king moves. Then the pawn comes up. I like that much better. He really didn't sacrifice a pawn because it's going to be impossible for black to save the h5 pawn. So we'll go the next few moves. They go for a while. And that's where they decide to draw. Where is the white king going to go? Try to go up here and here. Then this pawn hangs. Even if he takes this, it's a draw. It was a hard-fought game. I think Nate Bonacci had his chance to really, really turn the screws on Magnus, and he missed it with that queen move. But these guys are under a lot of pressure. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think they play 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I believe it starts. So we're probably looking at 4:30 in the afternoon. So this is a 3-4 hour game. So by the time they get done, it's 7, 8 o'clock at night. Now, chess players are notorious night people, but they're exhausted. And they've been resting during the day, eating, probably doing a little exercise, maybe going over some of their seconds. They've been figuring out on the computer some moves and some openings, some they call theory. Maybe a novelty. A novelty is a move that hasn't been played at a high level in an opening. It's something new, which puts your opponent on the back foot, and he's got to waste a lot of time figuring out what the right response is, because obviously you've prepared for almost every move and you know what to do right away. Or your opponent, being that it's a new move, doesn't. That happens quite often as well. A lot of psychology. A lot of psychology in chess. And you got to have great memory. That's why when you hit 30, 35 at the world-class level, you lose a lot because your memory isn't as good. You're still an amazing player, but you don't remember as much as you used to. That's just the way it is. Believe me, I turned 65 last week, and I don't like it. There's a few things I don't remember. It's harder to remember. But anyway, folks, there it is. Game 2 of the World Chess Championship 2021, played in Dubai between a white, in this case, a world champion from Norway, Magnus Carlsen, in black, and Nepomniachtchi from Russia. I thought it was a great game. And I just brushed through it quickly because these videos would end up being too long. But if you've got a computer or a board, go over the games. That's the way to learn. Go over. Study. That's always the way it is. Anyway, folks, until the next game, goodbye and good luck.